Hey everyone, and welcome to day 6 of my 12 days of anime videos. So like my video yesterday where I had my top 10 debuts for manga in 2018, today I'm going to show off my top 5 manga finales or series that finished in 2018 that I want to show off. Again, this is not a comprehensive list. There are plenty of series that finished this year, some that are quite beloved, others I haven't even read or seen or know nothing about. And of course, these are the series that the books in English have finished. I don't know how long it's been since the manga itself has ended, but this is just for English publishing. There's no honorable mentions this video, unlike the last one, because I showed off really my 1 volume honorable mentions there, and I didn't really have any others to talk about. So I'm just going to get straight into my top 5, and I hope you guys enjoy. First off is My Brother's Husband by Genguro Tagame. This is a series released in English by Pantheon Books in two in one omnibuses, and this Pantheon, from what I'm aware, don't really put out manga all that often, and this was a very special case. Genguro Tagame is most well known outside of Japan, I guess, in Japan and outside of Japan for his gay komi. He has very explicit works of gay manga from a gay man for other gay men. So he is quite well established outside of Japan, and this is his first family-friendly series. It still does, of course, handle topics about LGBT issues, but is not really a erotic or pornographic type of work. This is the story about a Japanese man and his daughter, and the two of them welcoming their brother-in-law / uncle to their home in Japan. So our main character, his brother was gay and he met his husband whilst living in Canada. Unfortunately, he passed away quite in an untimely way, and his husband has come to visit Japan for the first time to learn about his culture and his family and just the town that his husband grew up in. It's a absolutely marvelous series. It's one that made me weep on several instances, and although it functions as a somewhat educational manga, it's not really cut and dry facts, this is what happens, these are the stats type of deal. It's more so, of course it's a fictional story that allows open dialogue or introduces questions that allow for open dialogue about LGBT issues in Japan and bigotry and prejudices, even if you're unaware of them, and that exist within society. It's so good. The framing of Kana, the daughter, as the innocent and inquisitive person who's obviously asking a lot of questions to be used as a framing device as an audience and as a way to discuss these topics without seeming like ham-fisted and just like soapboxing, is really well done and allows for our main character to internally recognize why his perceptions are the way that they are and his own prejudices that he never even realized, and sort of his own understanding of, you know, gay people and their lives, and why he had certain preconceptions previously compared to now, having actually met a gay person and spent an extended period of time with them. It's so good. I cannot encourage people enough to read this series. It's one that I absolutely adore and is a must-read. I feel like this is the type of manga that should be available in libraries, that should be on reading lists for kids and adults. It's one that needs to be seen by more and more people, because it's not only obviously tackling a subject matter that is very relevant in today's society, but it's done with such heart and with such care and with such intimate understanding of these issues that you never feel like you're being lectured to. It doesn't feel like a chore to get through. It doesn't feel like you're attending a class. It's just phenomenal, and one that I would encourage everyone to buy, especially if you're interested in LGBT manga and manga that are a little bit different from the norm. This is fantastic. Or if you just love heartwarming family stories, this is one that you need to read. Next on my list is Mataki Love Strikes by Mitsuru Kubo. This is a series that's released in 2 omnibuses by Vertical, and as I said with my video yesterday, I'm a huge fan of Kubo's work. The 2 series that have come out this year have both been wonderful, but both been very different. This series is a little bit harder to read and to recommend compared to Again, mainly because it's almost too relevant and too relatable to current trends in society today, especially in regards to how certain groups of young men perceive the world. So whilst it's really well done, and Kubo has a great way of never allowing her characters to get away with things just because they're protagonists. There's a lot of being called out in her series. It's not as much of a fun time as Again is. This series follows a young man in his late 20s who's a complete NEET. He's not in education, employment, or training. He really hasn't done much with his life. He's single, but all of a sudden one night he starts getting phone calls from 4 different women from his past. His Mataki has arrived, which is considered your season of popularity, where people, for some unexplained reason, for some inexplicable reason, you gain all of this popularity, and it's easy. You have to fight off the girls or the guys, depending on who you are, and you can finally sort of get your relationships in order. So this guy is quite socially awkward. He obviously doesn't have a lot going for him. He doesn't have a lot going on in his life. It's starting to be surrounded by all of these women who apparently seem to have an interest in him or are wanting a part or a place in his life, and he has to figure out like why this is happening, or who he should go with, or should he just have relationships with all of these women. It's really good. Again, this is sort of a manga that has a lot of points where you can see that there could be issues, especially considering how a lot of people sort of perceive the world, especially those who are single and don't want to be single, and sort of how they blame everyone else that they're single and nothing's ever their problem. Mataki addresses that directly, and it's really well done. Thankfully, for all of our protagonists' faults, there is points where he does recognize that his situation is completely his fault. He can't blame anyone else for it, so he hasn't gone completely, just out there with responsibility or not taking responsibility, being a victim. But it's really, really good. As I said, it's not a fun series to read necessarily, and I know some people don't like it because of how the story's written and I guess the premise of it. It's a difficult one, but for the themes and the topics that it's trying to address, it does phenomenally. It does really, really well. Kubo wanted, I've read in interviews that she wanted to address all the different sorts of relationships outside of purely romantic ones, or how romance can develop from various relationships. And Mataki, she felt quite constrained with the premise of it, so that later allowed her, when she followed up with her later work, which was her work on Yuri on Ice, she wanted to be more unrestrained. She wanted to explore these themes a lot more and with so much more freedom, and I think she achieved that. This series is very, very, very good. It's not for everyone, but it's one that really makes me respect Kubo as an author because, as I said, she never allows her characters to get away with something merely because they're protagonists. They're not really allowed to feel sorry for themselves and blame other people for their issues, because other characters will make them responsible, will make them own up to their responsibility and their role in their own life and be an active participant in their life. It's really, really good. Another one that I think a lot of people should try, but it's not one that is going to make you feel like super happy about it by the end of it. But really enjoyed this manga, and as I said with Again, I do hope we see more Kubo manga over here because she is a fantastic mangaka. Next is Sweet Blue Flowers by Takako Shimura. This series is 4 2-in-1 omnibuses put out by Viz and is a Yuri title following two high school girls who are childhood friends reconnecting after years apart and sort of their relationship from there. I've mentioned previously that although I am a fan of a lot of Yuri titles, I don't really enjoy a lot of the private high school girl, like fluffy bubbles type thing, and I don't really enjoy the really skeezy, oh, let's just have girls kissing for the sake of it type deal either, which unfortunately seems to be the two sides, or previously used to be just the two sides that of Yuri that we would get. Sweet Blue Flowers, written by Shimura of Wandering Sun fame, you may recognize her name, is, whilst it is, again, high school girls, and it does have one of them at least in a private school, the way she approaches relationships in both of her manga, Wandering Sun and Sweet Blue Flowers, is done with a very realistic tone. It doesn't have this layer of like bubble-like softness that's removed from the rest of the world. Both of her stories very obviously exist within our understood reality. So they do address actual issues with, at least with this series, it does address how people perceive you as a lesbian or as someone who who's a girl who also likes girls, or bisexuality, or all of these sorts of things. And of course, is, like with her other series, is a coming-of-age story that features LGBT themes or sexuality and sort of figuring out what you are and how you feel about certain things. This is a beautiful, beautiful series. Definitely one for Yuri fans to pick up, but especially also if you're a Shimura fan, of course, this is a must-get. both of her series that are available in English, the way she writes stories, you get about 70% of the story on page. So there's a lot that's left up to imagination or left up to be filled in contextually. We don't have to see every moment within these characters' lives, and although sometimes that may act a little bit confusing for some people, I find it just allows this organic type of feeling when time is passing. You know that time has passed and you don't necessarily have the privilege of seeing every single moment, and from what we see sometimes the aftermath or the lead up to an event without necessarily seeing the event itself. And Shimura really focuses on like the emotional impact of, you know, the aftermath or the lead up rather than the in the moment reaction. It's really interesting how she writes her series. It's really unusual. I wouldn't say I've seen it in too many other manga, but this is a fantastic story. I absolutely adore it. I'm a big fan of Shimura, as many of you guys probably know. And this is one that if you are wanting to try a Yuri, or if you're wanting to dip your toes into LGBT manga, because I do really regard this as more within the realm of like Shimanami Tasagare or that blue sky feeling than a more traditional Yuri series like Girlfriends or Citrus or whatever else is out there. It has obviously this romantic love between two girls, but it's not just that. It does really show and challenge and question and place these characters into our world and seeing how everyone else works with that and works around that or reacts to that, and the realities of this situation without it just, you know, automatically being a happily ever after as soon as our characters get together. It's very, very, very good. I would highly recommend it, and yes, I'm so happy we finally found this series in English and found its way to print after so long. This is not the last volume because it has been released, but it's on its way to me. I haven't gotten it yet. But my next favorite for series that finished this year, and that is Descending Stories Showa Gen Roku Rakugo Shinju, the historical drama about Rakugo and Rakugo masters and the life of one who is regarded as like pretty much the best in the business at the time. His life story, his experiences, and his influences for his Rakugo and his performances and his life over his lifetime. It's phenomenal. This is a amazing series that I've said this whenever I pick this series up, but this is a series that never would have been licensed 5 years ago. Even with its anime adaptation, which is superb, I highly recommend it. It's on Crunchyroll. Even with that anime adaptation, it's far, far too niche to get any real publicity or popularity. And although it's beloved by everyone who's seen it, or at least majority of who've seen it, it's not one that can really rival a My Hero Academia or a Attack on Titan or anything like that. Even a Yuri on Ice. It doesn't have that broad appeal because it does... The main premise is Rakugo, or the art of storytelling, especially comedic storytelling, but dramatic storytelling, all sorts of storytelling. Which is a very Japanese cultural thing, and is not necessarily something that manga readers, especially younger manga readers, are going to try. But this is a beautiful series about legacy and family and art and the evolution of art and war and the changes within society and guilt, regret, and trying to move on from the past, and so many beautiful things, and just done so well. I adore this series. I make no no secret about that. And yes, the 10 volumes of this series are such a roller coaster to experience. The anime 2 series are an adaptation of the entirety of the manga series, so you do get all of it. Please try the series out. The fact that Kodansha has put out Kumota's work is amazing, and I can only hope more and more people try this as time goes forward, and that I hope this series really establishes itself as one of the standout josei that's available. This and some other works really show the variety and the absolute breadth of what is possible with comics and josei, specifically, but just manga in general. So yes, if you're looking for a family drama that has all of those themes that I mentioned before, I would absolutely encourage you to pick this one up. Last but certainly not least, we have Princess Jellyfish by Akiko Higashimura, which finished this year with its 9th volume. Previous volumes were 2-in-1s. This one is 1 and a bit. And this series is incredible. I'm sure most people know about this series. It's definitely the breakout hit of josei and is going to be getting a complete series box set next year. So if you haven't started collecting this series yet, you can get it all at one time from Kodansha next year. If you're not familiar with this series, it follows a 18-year-old girl who is an absolute otaku for Jellyfish. She's an illustrator, but really doesn't have much going on in her life aside from her interests. She also lives with a bunch of other women who are otaku of various sorts, whether it be trains or kimono or old men or whatever. And they really exist just within their boarding house. They don't like to interact with the outside world, or as they see it, populars, people who can function normally, quote unquote, within society. So they just live in this sort of sheltered habitat where they're able to enjoy their obsessions and not really have to worry about much else. One day, our main character Tsukimi meets a gorgeous girl who helps her with securing and saving the life of a jellyfish, and she sort of invites herself back to this boarding house and intrudes on their lives, and she actually finds out this beautiful, popular looking, gorgeous woman is actually a young man in women's clothing, in drag, sort of functionally. And he, Kuronosuke, reveals himself as just really being into fashion and being into women's clothing and performance, and having clothes represent the person and how much you can change yourself with clothing. It's not only his interest in clothing and fashion, but also a way to rebel against his father's wishes, who is a politician and a very stuffy suit type of person. And because he really doesn't want to go into politics like the rest of his family. This is a phenomenal series about love and creativity and the celebration of interests and having something you're passionate about. Although our characters all have very different things that they're interested in, whether it be women's fashion, whether it be jellyfish, they're all equally valid. And if you have something in your life to be passionate about or to care about so ardently, that's more so a gift than anything else, regardless of what other people think and the perception of you to normal society. Really, because everyone has something they love and that they're interested in, but some things are deemed more appropriate within society than others. And for these women, where their interests are all fairly innocuous, there's nothing actually bad that they're interested in, they still feel like they're being shamed or kept out of what is appropriate in modern society. People don't want to know, and they don't want to get involved with other people because of that. And this manga bridges that gap between having a love or a obsession about something that seems really off the wall, really unusual and niche, and what is seen as the mainstream. Marrying those two sides and realizing that they're not different at all, that just because you have something that people don't really otherwise talk about, that you absolutely love and obsess over and that you know everything about, doesn't mean that you don't have a place. You don't have a reason for people to listen to you. It's done incredibly well. It also tackles this idea of your outward appearance, how you dress yourself especially, and present yourself to the world, allows people to understand who you are as a person and to evaluate you as a person, which is not necessarily always a good thing, but how fashion functions within society as a way for you to express yourself and as a way for other people to understand you just from what you're wearing and what you look like. It's so well done. I adored how this series ended. I was a little bit hesitant because I knew that it was a fairly open-ended ending. And I knew people were like, well, there wasn't very much like finality to it. There wasn't anything that was necessarily like conclusive to the story. But people were still like, that doesn't take away from the series itself. I must say the last chapter in this series made me cry, like actually a lot. Not just the couple tears or getting choked up. The ending of the series and knowing that the series finished made me bawl because it was over, and I really do love how Higashimura ended it, because although it is open-ended and although it's, you know, there's no conclusive, oh, such and such got together and this happened and everything's, you know, it's a happy ending, there's so much hope and potential and love in it that you don't really need to see how it ends, how it continues on, because it's one of those series that, you know, life continues on for these characters, and there's going to be ups and downs, there's going to be hard times, and there's going to be things that, you know, they still have to go against, or that people might learn about after the fact, or they, you know, they find their place in society or not. But it's the potential, the growth of the characters over the entirety of the series, and how the series ended, both with all of the characters, all the friends characters' friendship, and then also the romantic aspect of it, it didn't need to be conclusive. We didn't need to know all the answers. And because life really it doesn't end at a point where you get all the answers and that's it, and everything stays, you know, stagnant from that point, and in this status of just non-movement, because life does continue to evolve and continue to change, and people continue to evolve and change. It's, as I said, I've spoken way too much about this series already, and if you have any, you know, I'm sure I've spoken about it previously with pickup videos with this series, but this is one that I understand just why the series is so popular. Why this series was the one to really bring josei to the forefront of English-speaking audiences and the English-speaking market. It has such a broad appeal, especially for us in a community that is kind of considered niche, fans of manga and fans of anime. We are still far from the mainstream. I think everyone can relate to this series, and even if you're not a manga or anime fan, even if you're a fan of something that isn't, you know, necessarily what everybody else is interested in, you can relate to aspects of this manga. It's so funny and well-intentioned and heartwarming and just really well done, well executed, funny, and amazing characters, all of them, every single one. It's just incredible how much is done perfectly in this series, and it's a treasure that we've gotten within the English manga community. Again, if you haven't started this series, there is a box set coming out next year that you can look forward to and get all 9 books at once. It's one that people have been raving about since Volume 1 was released. It's one that I've been raving about since Volume 1 released, and I honestly do believe that it deserves its reputation. It's one that should not be missed, and one that I think will retain its status within the community, especially within the josei community, for the foreseeable future. It's a classic, and I adore it. And that was my last one for this list. So, that was my 5 favorite finales or series that ended this year. All really wonderful series. Quite a few common ones there. Probably similar themes to my favorite debuts of this year. And again, of course, this is my personal opinion. I do not have a comprehensive experience with every single manga series that's coming out, so I'm sure there's series that ended this year that I haven't even started or have no real intention to start, as well as a lot of series that I did read this year, but just didn't make it to this top 5 list. For one reason or the other, they just didn't make the short list. But there's been so many good things in manga the last couple of years, and going forward into the future, we have so many more manga beginning and ending to look forward to. This is so much, like, I can't even put to words how many wonderful things are coming out right now, are being made available both in print and digitally. It's really a wonder that we've gotten to this point with manga. But let me know your personal picks for your favorite finales or series that you finished this year, that ended this year, that you love and that you wish, you know, maybe you wish could continue on, or maybe you're really happy with how it ended, or maybe you're really let down with how it's ended. Tell me some of those series where you wish that there had been more, or that, you know, you feel like the ending was just really rushed or let the series down. I'd like to hear those as well. But yes, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. I'll see you tomorrow for my next 12 Days of Anime video, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Bye till then.